Thank you for joining us for another episode of Ready, Real Estate and Divorce Plus You. Today, we have our very first guest. We're super excited about it. Dave Adamczyk of Michigan Investigative Group has joined us. And we're going to talk a little bit about how being a PI integrates into the world of divorce. So thank you for joining us, Dave.
Not a problem. Jumping straight into it, and one of the most saucy probably topics, and you bring the PI in as the first guest. Oh boy, I'm in trouble.
Well, I dressed for the occasion. So
Yes.
This is CCPI.
I love it.
So I'm going to be a mix between James Bond, female version, and a PI. So I brought a martini because you know how he likes it shaken, not stirred.
There you
Yes.
go.
Well, he likes it shaken, so the alcohol goes to the bottom. If you stir it, then the alcohol will infuse and you get drunk. So I'm going to pretend to drink, but not get drunk. So
Look
Where's
at
your
that.
Christina?
Christina, I got to tell you, being married to
in
Christina,
it.
she is a natural PI. She actually, a lot of people told her she should have been a private investigator, a police officer, or an investigator because she sees everything. I mean, like everything. Like
Ken,
no
that's
matter.
all women.
No, it is. I mean, just tell your
We're
quick
really good
story
like
from
that.
like a week and a half ago. I mean, it's.
I have no idea what the story is, but I'm waiting for the juiciness.
When you called the police and there was a husband and wife. All right, it's a quick entrance into it. That was scary. I don't know if
That
we want
was
to go into it.
scary.
You
A
must have.
domestic violence while he was driving his car. The back window was busted out, and he's like hitting her as if we're driving. So of course I'm on the phone, 911.
Wow.
They got him.
my
She's
goodness.
protected. He went to jail. The car was towed.
This
And
is just a
then,
week
he,
and a
and
half
then he
ago.
ends up, and then they end up over at Jeff's office. Say that?
Yeah.
That story doesn't sound
That's just
familiar,
straight
but
No, you do notice everything, but you should have been. So if you need a backup,
Oh, there we go.
investigator,
I
Here we
already
go.
look. I straightened my hair. I got
know.
the jacket. Wait.
Yeah.
I won't get drunk on the martini because it's water on top. Because
Just
of
So
Yeah,
that
that's the story
thinking.
you're sticking to it.
That's
right?
what I'm sticking
Okay.
to it. Okay, but thank you for coming
good
on.
stuff.
There
And I can be the backup to the backup.
Oh, there we go.
See?
Our
Yeah.
giggling
All right.
might tip them off.
All right.
We'll have to
Okay.
be careful. So tell us about your background. What led you into this and all the juicy details?
Yeah,
Wanna
so
know.
like a lot of investigators, most investigators in Michigan and across the country start out in law enforcement. So a lot of us have training. Some investigators are trained from former law enforcement people. Really, when you get into the industry, I would have to say most of your most tenured and well-respected investigators are former law enforcement or federal investigators. So I'm a former police officer, an investigator, and going back to those days from fraud to regular investigations, as you know, as a beat cop as well, to cyber investigations, which spawned into then on the civil side when I got out of law enforcement to insurance fraud, insurance investigations, fire investigation, and the plethora of things, but a lot of domestic stuff. So the sauciness about domestic, what we call domestic, is divorce, cheating spouses, suspected cheating spouses or significant others, or even had cases where the father of the daughter who's getting married, hey, check out this son-in-law, or vice versa. The mother-in-law says, hey,
I did not think about
Yeah,
that.
I'm
it
gonna call you.
happens. It happens.
I'll
Hey,
call
this
you.
person's
Someday I'll
looking
be
to get
calling you.
married. What's their real background? So people don't think about it, but those phone calls do take place.
I thought a good deep social media dive is very thorough, but there's been a few cases that some people can't find their significant other or the person they're dating on social media. Like it's all hidden or non-existent, which is odd nowadays. Seems like everybody has some form of social media or
So whether
some
it's
people
not,
have fake names though too, don't
they do, and so whether or not it's a social media profile, somebody usually has a digital footprint. So being that they have created profiles that may be on a site somewhere, maybe it's not the traditional Facebook, Tinder, things like that, but they may have just profiles. Maybe it's from a corporate setting of LinkedIn and things like that. As these profiles, whether it's commercially or socially made, they kind of span and evolve and go on out. And so that digital footprint that somebody has is out there, and there's a plethora of that information. So,
You're also kind of a celebrity, I hear, too.
So there was a couple back in the day. I did a ton of stuff in Oakland and Macomb County. I was probably one of the larger investigators in the early 2000s with marketing and things like that. I did tons and tons and tons of domestic surveillance. Testified as an expert in surveillance through several courts from here to Arizona. Traveled across the country doing some investigations for customers.
What kind of cases primarily?
Domestic.
Okay.
So
domestic,
I had customers that flew me from here to Florida, from here to Arizona, here to California, to do cases. And then I was even on Mojo in the Morning Show, as known as PI Dave, for a couple episodes with them. And,
that was
Tim
you?
Collins. Yeah, that was me back in the day.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So,
so
it was fun. It was fun.
I think I called into you once.
Maybe. Were you a CC? No. It's all good. It's all good. But it was a lot of fun back then. Those are a great set of guys that are on the show. So just depending on where it goes, there was a lot of exposure, and it's been a great ride. So
I bet you have some crazy stories that you may or may not be able to share. The names may or may not be changed.
Yeah, so in Michigan, our laws are much like attorneys. So we do have what's called the investigator privacy laws that prohibit me from disclosing certain bits of information unless the client releases that authority, much like an attorney that has. And so being able to have some of that, but I can talk in generality and talk about some of the funniness that happened with that. So one day I can remember, you have to sometimes, what they say, get the money shot, right? So you got to do what it takes, right? You're paid to get the money shot. And so sometimes you're maybe hiding in the side of a snow hill with a white sheet, been there, done that. You got to get it, right? You don't have a choice, but hey, if there's the back of the house leads into this field and it's in the middle of winter, but the blinds are open. Hey, their blinds are open, but you're looking in, right? Next door neighbor can see in, well, so can anybody else. So the other time is, somebody goes camping and you're out the side. So in a camo pop-up tent, on the side of a swamp doing that. And you just, you got to get the shot. So you got to do what you got to do. You have to get creative. You have to think outside the box. Sometimes use tools, camo tents, white sheets. You got to get creative. It's not always the glasses and the mustache and everything else. And the hat, but you just got to think outside the box. You have to be on your feet always.
From an intuitional standpoint, when somebody comes to you, like they don't know for sure and they don't have evidence, what do you suggest to people as far as taking the next step? What are the signs? Is it just a plain intuition, or is there certain things that you should come for? Because if they're coming to you, they're coming to something, they want to find something, but what do you suggest to people?
Ken, I never doubt women's intuition, and obviously Cece's now, but, but the thing is, and neither should you, obviously, but the thing is, usually the significant other's intuition is there. And the thing is, usually an investigator is, in most cases, just solidifying that suspicion or that intuition. And because, let's face it, myself or another investigator, we're not there in the house in that situation on a daily basis. So, oftentimes you're there fact-finding, gathering additional facts for that person, providing some solidification of, did they go here? Did they not go here? Are they being truthful on things that they say they are? But maybe it has nothing to do with infidelity or something along that line. Maybe it's just truthfulness and something along that line that somebody's working through. There was one case that had nothing to do with infidelity, but it had to do with more of a let's just call it regrouping of the person's life and accountability. And the significant other was using us to fact find information to see if the person was being truthful as for an accountability partner. So with that, it can be whatever it needs to be. And you're just the facts. Facts are the facts, right?
Well, I have a question for Jeff too, because so this is great that you do your service. What legally though, he's gathering all these facts, he's got all this information, he comes back with like, what would you say would be needed, and how much does that actually help?
Well, it depends on what it's needed for. A lot of times the information that a private investigator gathers usually, I don't want to say, and I don't know your experience, Dave, but a lot of times from my experience, it's what the client needs to have some answers, whether it's for closure or whether it's for them to rationalize or feel comfortable with the decision they're making, whether to go through with the divorce or to start the divorce or not. Is their suspicion really true or not? Now, how is it going to make a difference in their case ultimately? A lot of times, sometimes it doesn't make a difference at all, and sometimes it does. It depends. Are they hiding money? Are they using money to carry out an affair? And it's all relative too. Are they spending a lot of marital money? And a lot is all relative to the situation. I had somebody one time who was client of mine who testified at a deposition that he was spending $300 a night on hotel rooms 2 or 3 times a week for his affairs. And in that case, though, the judge had to stop and say the deposition and the attorney fees involved were costing more than that relative to the size of their estate and how much work was going to be done. And at that point, they were going to spend more money than what it's worth if that's all they had on my guy was those hotel rooms. I had another situation where I had a client who had bought one of his girlfriends a Rolls Royce, another one, I think it was an apartment in Paris and all kinds of stuff. And in that situation, the equitable division of the marital estate, rather than it being an equal or what people refer to as 50-50. Now the law is equitable division, not equal division. Usually it ends up being equal is what's equitable, what's fair. And in this situation, he ultimately settled and agreed to give more than 50% of the marital estate to avoid having to deal with further investigation and a lot of this coming to light, maybe his kids finding out, and then all of that, and settled it outside of court and through a mediation.
Now, Jeff,
I heard a Rolls Royce and an apartment in
Paris.
Like everything.
And then did your brain just shut off?
It popped open in my head, and I'm thinking, so maybe you're just going to introduce me to some of your friends at some point.
Some of your
What am
clients?
I doing wrong in life?
What about a prenup? So taking a report that would come from PI Dave over here, can you go through a prenup with that evidence? If there was infidelity and it null and void the contract.
Potentially, but it would be whether or not that prenup is enforceable, which is the whole other issue, which I think we touched upon a little bit last week, but that it depends on, again, whether or not it's enforceable. But if it is a provision that's in there and the prenup is ultimately deemed to be enforceable and somebody violated something in there, then yes, it could help or hurt, depending on which side you're on.
Now, Jeff, you see it a lot of times. Most of the time in Michigan, they call it leveraging the liabilities. That's where a lot of times I see it with counsel, where they use this type of information, where sometimes somebody has racked up the debt, hotels, other fees, other
Correct.
expenses. So in leveraging the liabilities is where we usually see sometimes it comes into play, but 90% of the cases, it's just solidifying the suspicion.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is. And
The confirmation of this is what it is.
And sometimes, listen, there's a substantial amount of marital funds that were used, and somebody's going to end up having to pay those back.
Yep.
And it's all relative. Every situation's different. But, and listen, I have some clients that don't want to know. They don't want to know the truth, and they would rather not know. And sometimes they insist on knowing. And sometimes it does make a difference. And not just necessarily with the cheating spouse thing. It could be on how they treat their kids, how they take care of their kids. What are they doing during their parenting time? Are they drinking and getting in the car and driving with their kids, which is extremely serious. So I don't know that we necessarily use you only for in the cheating spouse situation, but we've used
custody issues,
investigators in custody issues, parenting time issues. And even, Holly, I would think, and I don't know, do you see any of your clients, any buyers and sellers using it just from a real estate standpoint, not even going through a divorce, but does anybody ever hire a private investigator to find out the story or the scoop on the house? Have you seen that come up?
You know, I've heard stories on that, but I don't know if, I don't actually have a personal story of someone hiring a PI, but people will ask us questions. They'll ask me questions, about the house. Like, hey, tell me about the background of this house. Why are they selling it? What happened? Did somebody die here?
Wait, don't you have to disclose that someone died inside the house?
You don't.
The
No,
home?
you don't.
No.
What's interesting.
You don't
What
have to
got me
disclose
to
that.
think
So they
about
ask me to find out.
Not even if they're murdered.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's not a disclosable thing.
What?
So if somebody really, some people get weirded out by certain things. My thought is there could be, this house has been here for 50 years. A lot could have went down in this house, honestly, right? So I don't look at it like a big deal. Some people look at it like a big deal, and maybe they would want to, delve into it. I think there was some story or something that you have a story on this too.
and this is what prompted me to think about this was a few years ago there was a house that we saw that my parents were interested in, and the price seemed too good to be true, but we negotiated a deal. Hadn't signed anything yet, and I don't know why I didn't even think of Googling the address in the beginning, but I Googled it 2 or 3 days into negotiating the deal and getting close to doing the deal. I Googled the address and found out there was a murder-suicide in the house between a husband and wife. And I called the realtor, who was the listing agent at the time, and she says, oh, yeah, but it's, I guess, somehow skirted around the issue, but apparently now I find out, I didn't know whether they had to disclose it or not. That's just something I was not familiar with. And but she told me it's going to make a difference probably for the immediate sale, but not the next sale. And since then, I've seen the house resell for $300,000 more than what it was sold for back then. Obviously, we didn't end up buying it after that, but I guess if we could have lived with it, we could have made some money on the deal.
Right.
But that's one of the situations.
$300,000 is worth sleeping in a bad juju home.
See, for me,
I don't know.
I
Like,
look at
is
it
that bad
different.
juju?
No, you don't need. But here's
I don't
the
know.
thing.
Look at
I would want to know if it was a drug dealer's house, because here's the only reason why I'd want to know, because who's going to be coming back looking for the person that was there? I would look at it more like, did the people that used to live there do something that would cause me to be on the line for who's coming to look for you? That would be a big concern, I would say.
So sometimes some of that information is really hard to find because, in that you have to really go into pull, police runs on a house and this and that. And a lot of that stuff really isn't without FOIAing information. You're not going to find. You can't go on BSA software, depending on the municipality that you're in, and you can't find that information out. Even the regular databases that we have access to, the same as lawyers and things like that, we can't pull up. That information doesn't come up in our searches. You have to actually go to municipalities, go to police departments and look that up. So when you look at stuff like that, but here's a case. So you have a case that could start out as infidelity. Had a case, started out as infidelity. The wife takes the information home, presents it. So people who do consider investigators, be cautious with it, because what is the emotional state of the other person? Took the information home, and the significant other decided to commit suicide the next day. So with that information, just couldn't live with himself any longer and everything else. And there was other things going on in his life, but that maybe that was contributing, tipped it over the edge or whatever it may be. So you see things like that, but in relation to, you would never know, because was that infidelity? Was it this? Was it that? Was it the suicide in the back? This is not in the house. This was in the back of the property. They had a bunch of property, but it's not in the house. Right? So you don't know what you're going to get on this transaction that's going to turn up, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that can happen. And this one was a rural area. Who knows what happens out west and in the rural areas, right?
For sure.
It seems like from a leverage standpoint, when you're going through divorce, I think it's, from my standpoint, it would be good to know what I don't know, even if it's what I don't know is nothing. Just as you leverage it as you're going through the divorce situation, your whole life unfolds in a way, and it's like you don't want to necessarily be vindictive with it, but you just want to know what your leverage is to create the best outcome to turn the page.
I
Does
like
that make
that, Ken.
sense?
Everybody pull out your cell phones. Let's do this.
Oh, I don't have mine with me.
Oh, yes, you do.
It's over
Watch
there.
us. We're all cheating spouses. Here's the thing. Here's what we say. If we're all cheating spouses, here's what we're going to do. You go home, everybody who's doing this, save your money from investigators. Because Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. You go home and you say, hey, sweetie, hey, honey, whatever. I think this is up. Let's go have our cell phones imaged. So we do imaging here of cell phones and computers and everything else.
Wait, imaging?
Imaging a cell phone for text messages and everything else. I'll put mine up against anybody else's.
Wow.
So the thing
What's
is,
that?
watch this. Bring your phone into Investigator. Let's get it imaged. I have no problem if somebody wants to see because I'm going to pull up stuff from 4 years ago on that device.
Even stuff that was deleted, you can pull up,
stuff
right?
that's
No
deleted.
way.
Yes.
Well,
So you gotta
don't we
put- you
remember
gotta put a
what
phone in your
happened
pocket
in
there.
our fair city?
No, watch this, because you're
with
going to
some
see all the text
messages.
messages. Forget burner phones, because nobody is that smart to not connect the two and text forward this to that and everything else. I've caught most people with that.
Wow,
But the thing is, put your phone up on the table, with your spouse, and just say, hey, let's go get them imaged. And I bet you 90% of the cases I've worked with, the one who says, I'm not doing that, there's the guilty conscience. Why not? It's an open book, right? What are you going to see?
I am like the
You
most
have a jovial
boringest
conversation, right?
person.
Exactly.
So I mean, I would offer mine
most
up.
people would.
I know.
You have banter back and forth with work.
Yeah.
People friendship, high school friends, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But if you've got nothing to hide, put it up.
So
put
if
up
I
or
can't
shut
find
up.
something, I'm going to come to you and be like,
Put
hey, you
yours
need
on
to
the
find
table.
this.
Oh, just
So-
remind me to-
So so you look at
It's up.
this. Half the times, what I do is people call me and I say, go online, go on an investigator's website, print out their website, whatever, lay it on the table. Doesn't cost you anything, and just say, let's go to let's go and say. I said, you just saved yourself a couple $1,000s. I said, but before you do this, when I take the phone call, I say you better have your attorney ready. So you better be calling Jeff before you do this, because if they don't want to have it imaged, you better have Plan B in order right then.
Right. No.
Because there's stuff
It's going to
going
be a
on.
rough night.
Okay, so I have one last question from me, because I know that we have to wrap this up. But you said that you were the top PI that was doing marketing. You're out there, you're doing this. Because of your marketing, has a husband, wife, or whomever their significant other is come to you and hire you at the same time or right around the same time because they both were suspicious of each other, since your marketing was so broad and out there? Could they have known about you?
That has happened once, yes. So had a case that it's probably going about 10 years ago now, that I had the wife hire me and the husband hire us.
Okay.
And I could not disclose one thing to the other person.
Wow.
So to this day, I would have loved to have been the fly on the wall when this person, and this is back in the day when you had DVDs and here you go, and she goes, and they're both cheating on each other. So to be, hey, here's what you did to me, and he goes, well, yeah, here's what you did to me.
And there's nothing.
And it's the same,
And your name's on
company, and it's
both
the
of
same
them.
company. And the thing is, the information was so saucy, it was so out there that it was bad. And I don't care. I mean, they should have just said, they should have just reconciled.
That's what I'm thinking. That's Providence coming in saying,
Exactly.
you're both idiots.
But that
Yeah.
didn't provide any
know.
sort of conflict for you at all, or there's nothing preventing you from representing both in that type of
So the
situation?
thing is, where is the conflict? Because the conflict becomes, I can't disclose the information. So I can't disclose the information. At what point I give my information to my customer. I give my information. Now in this, say for instance, I'm going Cece and Ken, you're both married. Cece, you hire me to follow Ken, and I follow Ken to wherever he goes, right? Ken, you hire me to follow Cece, and I follow Cece wherever she goes.
She's stealth.
She's stealth.
You
I know
won't be
she's a
able to
tough
find
one,
her.
but I give you all the information where she went with her significant other, and I give you all the information that he went with his significant other, right? What you do with that information at that point is you're distributing the privileged information. You're
Okay.
distributing the privileged information. I haven't distributed. I've only given you the stuff that you've provided and you've paid for.
So there's
it's
no
different than being an
conflict of
attorney,
interest,
'cause you
like
can't-
Totally different
legal.
than
You
yeah,
can't
we,
do that.
Okay.
We can't do
okay.
that.
I know if you
No,
call an
exactly.
attorney, like if I call
Exactly.
you for something,
Yeah.
and you do other things
Yeah.
besides divorce
So,
too.
so
and if I
in
call
Michigan, we can't disclose it. So we have the issues of non-disclosure laws. So I can't disclose it unless my client waives it. So the thing is, you didn't waive it for me to disclose it to anybody. You didn't waive it for me to disclose it to anybody, and I didn't. But the thing is, the minute that you two do this, then it's out
And we
there.
slide
And now
the
the thing
DVDs
is,
across the same
I've
company
had
name.
several times. I've had where the spouses have exchanged the information. They call my office and they're like, you know what, blah blah blah. They read me the riot act and everything else, and I want an extra copy. He or she threw it, whatever. And that's fine, but at that point, I still can't. Hey, get a release from your customer. I don't care, or your significant other, whoever it is. But I can't disclose that. You're not my customer. So and that's the line that we have to toe.
Okay.
So wrapping it up.
Yep.
How will you wrap it up?
Well, I've learned a lot today, and I think that people listening are going to think twice about what they do on their cell phone first and foremost. And I mean, I think it's really helpful that you two will probably have lots of conversations at this
Yeah,
point.
I'd probably like to have Dave back on so we can have
it
an
seems like a
episode to discuss trackers on vehicles, trackers on people, because that's been coming up over the last several years in a lot of my
We'll
cases.
give a little lead in. The law has changed. Law enforcement needs a search warrant to put them on vehicles. Private eyes are the only person that can put them on without a search warrant.
That's
So I can put a
crazy.
tracker on anybody's vehicle right now in the state of Michigan.
And if a non-PI does it, they could get charged with
Correct.
stalking,
Correct.
which is a criminal charge.
Basically, a private investigator is a license to stalk, basically.
Okay.
What?
It's interesting. We have a lot. We'll have a lot of
Mind
discussions
blown.
about that.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm
pretty
ready.
close.
I'm
It's pretty
ready.
close. It's
All
pretty
right,
close.
we'll have you on again, Dave. Thank you for joining us today,
Thanks a lot.
and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Ready.
All right.